Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm filming my April wrap-up. I read 30 books this month. So 30 books in 30 days. I'm proud of myself, but I also know that this is going to be hell to film. So I'm just going to do a really quick run through of the synopsis and what I thought of every book. I'm not going into too much detail, which also may be because I didn't write that many notes. Yeah, every book I read this month I didn't write one note down for, which does not help when it comes to the end of month situation. But I will try and keep my thoughts as coherent as possible and show you what I read. The first book that I read this month was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This was so good. I am so glad that I finally decided to leap into this book. I've seen it everywhere on BookTube, everybody who loves fantasy loves this, and I just didn't give it the chance it deserved. This book is about Jude, who has her parents murdered by a fae, which is actually her sister's father. Yes, I've read the book, I just don't know the synopsis very well. And the murderer, I suppose, her sister's father, takes them to the Feyland with her, and they live there as humans. But humans are not treated very well in the Feyland. Jude realises that to be able to live in this land, she needs to gain respect. She's bullied by a group of boys from school, one being Carden, who is a main character in this story, and I think some people either love him or hate him. I haven't decided. I kind of love him and I kind of hate him. I don't know. But the main focus is the journey that Jude takes to gain respect within the Feyland. This book I gave a 5-star, and I've got the sequel, The Wicked King. I am ready to dive in this month. What I loved about this story was that it was not a hard to follow fantasy. It was based within the earth we live in now, just as a land across the sea from us, which made it a lot easier to imagine the world. The only thing I'll say about this is that I wasn't a lover of the main character or the side characters or anyone, to be honest. I kind of only am interested in Carden, not because I like him, because I don't know if I like him yet, but I think he's the only character with good depth. But it didn't ruin the story for me, so I suppose I'm being a bit hypocritical there. One thing I don't understand is, why does Carden have a tail? I kept forgetting, and then they just remind me and I'm like, oh yeah, that tail. That really gets in the way, that does. Baffling why that was an addition. But I thought this story was amazing and I cannot wait to finish this series. It is a new favourite of mine. I can't believe it took this long for me to read. The next book that I read was The Spare Bedroom by Elizabeth Neep. I gave this a 3.5 stars. This is a romance story about a woman who travels across the world to Australia to start afresh and get over her ex-boyfriend, but when she gets there, her job and her home fall through and she has nowhere to live, no money to make, nothing. So she is in the middle of a downpour of rain and she stumbles into a grocery store and tries to buy some wine. While she is standing in that aisle, she gets tapped on the shoulder by the ex that she is trying to get over halfway across the world. Ironic. He kind of forces her into telling him his situation, and he offers her to stay in his spare bedroom. She takes him up on that offer, thinks it sounds like a great one, until she finds out that that house is a shared house with his fiancé. But she has no choice because she is homeless and jobless, and so must stay in that house. We follow the journey of her building friendships, realising that not everything can go her way, trying to get over a boyfriend, making mistakes. This was a very traditional romance story. If you were not into romance, you will not like this story. However, I did like that the ending had a bit of a meaning where everything won't go the way you expect it. I don't want to say much more to spoil it for you. I recommend that when this book releases, you better definitely pick it up if you are a romance fan yourself, because I enjoyed it a lot. The next book that I read was The Stranger by Harlan Coben. I read this book and gave it a 3-star, which was probably being a little bit generous due to the fact I really liked the plotline idea. This book is about a man called Adam who is watching his son's football game, and a stranger approaches him and tells him that his wife faked her pregnancy a few years previous. He's confused how she knows this, she provides him some evidence, and he confronts his wife on the matter and finds out that it is true. His wife then goes missing, and Adam goes on a hunt to find who the stranger is to find out where his wife has gone. The plotline for this sounds so interesting. I was intrigued. I really wanted to read it, especially it was coming out on Netflix and I wanted to watch the TV show. And so I thought, well, I want to read the book first. I found this very, very anticlimactic. There was no action all the way through. And when I finally got to the end and got my very much wanted action scene, it was a flop. It revoked no emotion for me whatsoever. My heart rate would have been just flat as a pancake. Just wasn't executed very well, in my opinion. And it could have been a lot better, especially with such an interesting plotline. If you are interested in reading this book, my recommendation to you is to just head over to Netflix and watch the TV show because it is so much better. The action in that is non-stop, kind of at times too much, and you will enjoy it a lot more, I think, than you would enjoy this. I'm sorry, I usually prefer the books to TV shows, but for this case, it is definitely not a good choice to start with this. I also read Circe by Madeline Miller. This book is based around the idea that gods and goddesses live above us in the sky, and this book is following the one goddess, Circe, who is the daughter of Helios, I think, and she grows up and does something bad because she has witchcraft. Because of this action, she is banished to her own island where she is not allowed visitors, despite having them all the way through the book, and is not allowed to leave the island. She is stuck there. They have given her a house and food and supplies. She doesn't have to worry about physical survival, but she is isolated on her own, much like us. This book is not very action-packed. It is more of a journey, and you have to be willing to read a slow-paced, but I think it worked perfectly, and I thoroughly enjoyed every second of this. I gave it a 5-star. I thought the storyline was beautiful. I thought the character was enjoyable to follow. I liked all the different plot twists. I liked the matters that were handled, such as death and loss and grief and sadness and loneliness and mental health and everything in between. There is a trigger warning for rape in this, and it was quite a sad moment, and I really do suggest you proceed with caution because it even made me feel sick, and I'm usually not too bad with those things, so that's your warning for that. Also, the ending of this book left me with goosebumps. I was riddled in goosebumps. It was such an unexpected and emotional ending. I really suggest you pick this up if you do not mind a slow storytelling book. This month I also read the Children of Blood and Bone series by Tomi Adeyemi. First of all, I read Children of Blood and Bone. I thought this story was incredible. It follows the perspective of 3 people, Inan, Amari and Zeli, who are enemies to each other in some way. Follow Zeli on the journey to recover magic that has been stolen from the Magi's by the Titans. This book is fast-paced. You're constantly on the move. There is no pause for breath. It is good. You see so much character development. You love the characters. You see different sides to everybody. Nobody is the same. The POVs are equally enjoyable, which usually I hate a multiple POV story. In this, it worked, it was important, it was vital. One of my best reads of this year so far. It was a 5-star all the way. But then I read the sequel, and I'm not going to rant about it too much here because I've ranted about it enough in my Blue Books blog, which I will link. All I'll say in this is that this was a disappointment. I think if you're going to read, just read this. The cliffhanger's fine. I know there's a cliffhanger at the end, but just leave it at it because this doesn't answer the cliffhanger anyway. This book was pointless, nothing was resolved. The character development that you get in this first book is completely reversed in this. You don't like any of the characters, and I personally just find it infuriating that this came out of such a potentially good series. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I've ranted enough about it in that vlog, and you can see more of my in-depth thoughts there where I ranted for about 10 minutes. I then stupidly did a 36-hour readathon reading the entire series of unfortunate events. I will not be holding them all up for you because I have seemed to have held them up enough recently, so instead I will just show you the first one. If you have not seen that vlog, I will link it again. You should go and watch it. It was good fun. I updated you live time on my thoughts. This series follows the Baudelaire orphans after their parents have been killed in a fire, and they are bouncing from guardian to guardian, escaping Count Olaf, who is after their fortune. I gave this series overall a 3-star. I think the first 9 books are maybe a 4-star, but they do get repetitive as they follow the same structure all the way through. But the remaining 4 books, I think it is, are a 2 to 3 star because I just didn't enjoy the story. However, they are a lot more story based and they are not following the same setup that the first 8 or 9 books are. Overall, then, I balanced the series out to be a 3-star, and I think it was enjoyable, definitely a fun time to do that vlog. However, I will never put myself through that again. This month, I also read the entire Heartstopper series. Oh, I loved it. I don't even want to tell you how many times I cried during reading these. The representation in this is fabulous. I've not seen a book that is so inclusive as this series is. It is a graphic novel, so they're much more fun to read than a normal book, in my opinion. I recommend this. I haven't got much to say. I just 5-star all the way. Probably my favourite books ever, I think I have to say. They are so good. I read The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. This follows Leon and Tiffy. Tiffy is looking for a new apartment so she can move out of her boyfriend's flat, her ex-boyfriend's flat, and realises that she cannot afford a flat in London on her own. Meanwhile, Leon is working all the hours he can and cannot afford to keep his apartment in London. So he puts out an advert to flat share and bed share because there's only a 1-bedroom flat, and Tiffy takes up the offer. They end up living together but never meeting and only conversing through the use of post-it notes all around the apartment. This is such an interesting and unique romance, and there are so many more aspects to this. You see a storyline involving Leon's brother, you see a toxic ex, yes, but in a much more in-depth and unresolved way. This book was a 5-star read for me. I think that if you are interested in romance but you hate a typical same old romance, this is something that will blow you away, as it did with me, and I'm not a romance fan. I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer, the first in the Lunar Chronicle series, and I was disappointed. This book is a Cinderella retelling where Cinderella is now half robot, which was a very interesting storyline to me. I didn't mind the storyline. I think it's a well-written and a good story book. However, for me personally, the romance was lackluster. I wasn't interested in the protagonist. I kind of didn't like her at all. I don't think the book really resolved anything. I understand that the story is meant to continue into the rest of the series. I get that. But the book didn't do anything. There was no resolution to any part of this, which kind of frustrated me because I need at least a little bit of resolution in a book, even if there will be a cliffhanger. I was planning on not continuing this series. However, Books with Claire commented on my vlog where I read this, saying that I should give it a go because the series does improve from here, and so I will do. I will give this another chance. Not this book. I'll give Scarlet another chance, seeing as I already own it, and hopefully it'll be better. But for this, I just wasn't impressed. I then read My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. This is a domestic thriller with a twist. I went into this expecting a simple synopsis. Husband and wife enjoy a pastime of murdering people. The husband goes and finds the culprits. The wife tends to be the murderer. I enjoyed this book. I gave it a 3-star, which is good for a thriller. This was a very unexpected twist and ending. Not what I was predicting, that's for sure. Maybe you'd predict it if you were more accustomed to reading thrillers than I am. It was a little bit gory at times, I will admit, especially at the end. I felt a little bit uncomfortable. My main issue with it that took it from a 4-star was there wasn't that much action, but it was still enjoyable. And then at the end, the action scene is split. Like, it ends right in the middle of the action scene. Like, the whole book just ends. And then you have an epilogue that's 3 years later. And the resolution in the epilogue is not possible. It's ridiculous and wouldn't really happen, which for me ruined it because I like a realistic story. I like a thriller that actually has possible outcomes. I also read Feathertide by Beth Cartwright. This was a beautiful story about a girl who is born with feathers on her back. And she's unique. She knows that her father must be unique as well, but she's never met him. When she turns 18, she leaves her mother to go on a journey to find her father, who she has never met. On this journey, she finds new friends, new family, new lovers. Most people's problem with this story was that it was not very action-packed, and it isn't. It's more of a journey story, as quite a few of these have been, and I personally have no problem with that. I thought it was enjoyable. It didn't have the necessary need for an action scene, and so it didn't bother me. I think if you took away the heavy romance and the language, it would have been a perfect story for young teens to read and help them with situations such as loss and grief and things that they really should be reading about in books. I then made a whole video reading The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins for the first time. I'm going to tag it up there. It was so much fun to make, and I personally thought fun to watch. That may be a bit biased, you'll have to tell me yourself. This book was a dystopian survival story, and it was the best book of its kind. I have never read a story so impressive and well written. I thought the romance was great, I thought the survival was realistic, the elements of desperation and loss, even when they expected the loss. I just thought this whole book was magical. This writer is just incredible. This whole series I'm so excited for. If you have not seen that video, go and check it out because I do this all the way through. I was gushing all the way through. I then read 50/50 by Steve Cavanaugh, which is number 5 in the Eddie Flynn series. I have not read any of that series. This was the first book that I read. However, it is good as a standalone as well. This book follows Eddie Flynn, who is a lawyer, and he is representing one of the girls whose father has been murdered. He is the mayor of the town, and at the time of his murder, both of his daughters rung 911 at the same time to say that their sister had murdered their father and was about to murder them. They had a joint trial case, and you follow the perspective of Eddie Flynn and Katie, who is the lawyer of the other sister. And all the way through, you have a perspective of she, who is one of the sisters, and it tells you that she is the murderer, but you don't know which sister this is. This was a fabulously written book. I'm going to go read the entire backlist of Steve Cavanaugh because it was incredible. My issue with it was a 4-star for me, not a 5-star. Because the plot twist was very predictable from the beginning. I knew from the first chapter who the killer was, and I don't think you were supposed to. Well, you definitely weren't supposed to because the plot twist. This story kept me on the edge the whole time. I was nervous, I was anxious, it was gory, everything I wanted it to be, and I completely recommend. Next, I read The Master Chocolatier by Chetville, which is the first comic or graphic novel, I'm not sure, in the Boutique series. This follows a man who works for a chocolate shop making chocolate and designs. But his boss takes all of the credit, and then one day he meets his love interest's friend, who you also see a backstory of, but I won't explain that in this, who offers him the opportunity to open his own chocolate shop. And this comic follows them opening up said chocolate shop. This was a very short first novel or first segment to this series, and so you didn't see much happen. But what you did see was lovely, beautiful, and romantic. I cannot wait for the next installment of this. Then I read The Tales of Beedle the Bard by J.K. Rowling. Just a really great companion story to the Harry Potter series. This is just a book of all the fairy tales that were told to the wizarding children within the wizarding world. Like Little Bo Peep and things. It's just the wizarding versions of those, and they are very, very interesting to read. A great companion novel. I gave it a 5-star. It is not a long read, it's like 100 pages. If you like the Harry Potter series, I'm sure you'll like this too. And that wraps up the 30 books that I read this month. What a good month. I won't be doing this again. That wrap up wasn't as bad as I thought. However, it is my second time filming, so I was kind of done with it at this point. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.